when someone in my group had mentioned oxalate dumping. Others had mentioned it before in the group, but I didn't pay much attention to them until I finally did. After learning that oxalates are a poison to the body.
Hey everyone, this is your host Maurice from Carnivore Diet app, and on today's episode I have my good friend Eva. Now Eva has been on an internal quest for living life as optimally as possible, which eventually led her to the Raw Carnivore Diet. She is no medical expert and doesn't claim to know a great deal about the science of this diet beyond her own N=1 experience and those of her Raw Facebook group members. Started the group just over 13 months ago with more than 2,000 members and growing. Eva will share what she had learned since going raw carnivore, not only about her physical condition, but mentally and emotionally as well. Eva truly enjoys learning new things every day that help her get close to achieving her goal of healing her body and living as optimally as possible. Eva, good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm excellent. Thank you, Maurice. How are you?
I'm doing good. Good to see you, and I hope you had a great holidays.
Oh, I did. Thank you. I did.
And now we're back, probably fasting or possibly going back to the full raw carnivore. So today's conversation is going to be strictly talking about the raw carnivore diet, and I know you have been doing it for many months now. So we're just gonna dig right into it with some questions. So, what is a raw carnivore diet to you, and how long have you been eating strict raw for?
Well, I've been eating strict raw since August 6th in 2018. So 17 months on January 6th. And I'll actually have my 2-year carniversary on January 4th. So that's exciting.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And also I am strict raw for the majority of the time, but there are occasions I'll indulge in a blue rare steak or broiled lobster or crab while dining out at restaurants. And the raw carnivore diet to me is an enhanced way of eating. And for me personally, the best way of eating. A lot of people have found the same when cooked carnivore isn't quite doing the trick for them. Although cooked carnivore opens up a whole new door in allowing the body to detox, but raw carnivore is even more detoxing. And some people are finding their healing takes place more quickly. As we know, cooked carnivore frees up a lot of our time since there's no side dishes of plant matter to prepare.
Correct.
But nothing beats the ultimate fast food, raw carnivore. Just grab and eat it, right?
Oh, no kidding. Nice and simple. Just open the fridge, have a bite, and you're done with.
Absolutely. Or go in the grocery store, buy a package of meat, pay at the register, go out, and you're already eating it before you walk out the door.
And the nice thing about this is you will actually reduce the amount of time spending in the kitchen and deciding exactly what to cook or what to even make.
Yes, I love that.
and you know, I think you're probably in the same as me. I'd rather take that time and utilize it for something else, for sure.
You got that right. That's the most important thing, is having that extra time for all the other things we have to concentrate on boosting our health. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Now, overall, how have you been feeling compared to cooked? Any differences in like health-wise and or being, let's say, more satiated or not?
Okay. Well, at the beginning of my journey on a carnivore diet, I had many symptoms disappear over a short period of time and then also a longer period of time. Constipation was a lifelong issue of mine since childhood.
Okay.
And it only got worse over the years. Within a few weeks of weaning myself off of all supplements that helped keep me regular and having soft stools, my constipation was no longer an issue. This was confirmation for me that I was eating the best diet, because I still had to rely on supplements on all other diets. I had tried even Agenesis Raw Primal as well as Paleo and Keto. Then I began experiencing symptoms at about 6 months on cooked carnivore, which I had never experienced before. I was having acid reflux after eating. I was barely searing my steaks at this point. I've always eaten my steaks rare my whole adult life, so barely searing them was no biggie. Also, I was having to nap every afternoon because I was feeling fatigued later in the day. So I was starting to question the carnivore diet due to these new issues. Once I stopped cooking my steaks, I immediately stopped experiencing acid reflux. And
Okay.
within a few days, I no longer needed naps. So after eating all raw for a period of months, I was able to have a quickly seared steak on occasion without any negative symptoms, which was really cool. I definitely feel more satiated on raw.
Okay.
Also, my gut has this wave of calmness that flows through it after a raw meal, which doesn't happen with cooked. I've also noticed that my body detoxifies toxins and dumps oxalates much better consuming raw. For me, eating cooked slows the process down. And then eating raw wasn't something new for me. When I was a child, I'd eaten plenty of raw eggs, bacon, and dry aged Hungarian pork sausage, which was my favorite.
That's awesome. That's
Loved that.
amazing.
I couldn't get enough of that. And then also, I had been introduced to Agenus's raw primal diet, and I tried it for about 9 months or so in 2002. But the one thing I used as an indicator if it's a healthful diet for me was if it cured my lifelong battle of constipation. Unfortunately, his diet made it worse. So it took for me to go 100% carnivore, which made it possible for me to stop taking all the supplements that kept me regular and softened my stools. If I went one day without them, I was in huge trouble. I'll tell you, it was really bad. But no longer since eating carnivore, except for a few separate instances where I reintroduced dairy for a couple of weeks, tried a few cranberries at one point, and being on the iodine protocol for a short stint. Those
Okay.
bound me up like crazy. So overall, my digestion and my mental health functions best when eating raw carnivore.
That is amazing. And the most important thing is, you mentioned there you are more satiated, so you
Mm-hmm.
probably not eating as much because I know I do come across a lot of audience who are consuming, 2 or 3 pounds on a daily basis eating carnivore. And I believe, going full raw carnivore, you can probably eat less than half of that amount and you're more satiated.
Mm-hmm. Um, that's an interesting thing because personally, I'm finding my appetite changes, and it could be a myriad of reasons.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that overeating carnivore could lead to the chronic issues that some people might have. But anything's possible. I mean, it could. But I think when our body's driving us to eat more, um, especially if we're just experiencing some minor symptoms, there may be these other reasons that we're overeating. So based on my own personal experience with the diet, I've learned that sometimes it's necessary to overeat and follow our body's need for more food. So this does fluctuate as we progress further into the carnivore diet. More recently, I've gone down the oxalate rabbit hole. For the second time while consuming the carnivore diet, I was beginning to question its efficacy.
Hmm.
One of the things that the carnivore diet and eating raw has not healed yet is the chronic pain I have had since my vegan days in the mid to late 90s, as well as having very dry skin. At one point on the carnivore diet, I did experience a couple of months of very low level pain, but it was still there every day. Also, my skin was barely dry during that time. I guess
Okay.
you could say it was the calm before the storm. I have pain throughout my body in the muscles, bones, joints. Some areas are more painful than others. A couple of months ago, I started experiencing a high level of pain, which I couldn't understand why it was getting worse and not going away completely by this time of my journey on the carnivore diet. This is when someone in my group had mentioned oxalate dumping. Others had mentioned it before in the group, but I didn't pay much attention to them until I finally did. After learning that oxalates are poison to the body and extremely so, and that they are stored everywhere in the body, I now know this is what is causing the pain in my
Yes.
body, as well as other lingering symptoms I'm still dealing with. So I also learned that the best diet when you have oxalate issues is the carnivore diet. Now I'm 100% sure that consuming raw carnivore is the best thing for me. So what I've noticed when I'm dumping oxalates, my appetite increases greatly. So I see this as a good thing because my body obviously needs more nutritional support when it's dumping. So there's damage being caused by the oxalates cutting up the tissues it passes through in order to leave the body. The result is a high level of inflammation and pain. So on top of oxalates being dumped, The body is also continually detoxing metals, halides, etc., that have their own detox symptoms. So other reasons for changes in the appetite can be due to any of the following: a change in the season. Your appetite decreases in the summer months and increases in the winter months. Decreasing in the winter could be due to not getting enough sun exposure, grounding regularly, more detoxing happening, and a need to fatten up for the winter months ahead to be better able to handle the cold weather. Then you've got exposure to external pollutants such as chemicals, EMF radiation, pollution, etc. This can increase the appetite, especially for fat, because it has protective qualities. My understanding is if you live in a more densely populated area, it's more polluted and you need more fat in those areas. So if you're living further out where it's the woods, the farmland, you don't have as many pollutants there, you don't need as much fat. And then also when the body shifts into a greater healing mode, this may increase the appetite due to more nutrients required by the body. So any changes in our energy expenditure as well will increase when we do more physical work or exercise that we normally haven't been doing. And then it decreases when we do less. So there's a lot more other components to this, but these are some of the things we can consider being the reasons for an increase in our appetite. So it's not so much that it's a bad thing when we understand that there's reasons for it.
No, and you absolutely dived in so much in details that a lot of our audience will definitely appreciate that, and now they'll learn why this is happening and why it's not happening. That is amazing. You went all the way into it, which is perfect. Now, during the time of your raw carnivore eating, are you currently keeping record of your eating habits? As I know some of the audience, they are kind of experiencing some minor symptoms. Do you recommend, playing around with the fat to protein ratio? Like, for example, we've heard a lot of influencers mention, try to consume between 0.7 grams of protein to about 0.9 grams of protein per 1 pound of body weight. Play with the fat ratio between 1:1 or possibly 2:1 fat to protein. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. So first, going back to keeping a record, yes, I do and have from day one of the carnivore diet. I just wanted to document everything, to look back on how my progress is going. So yeah, I made this spreadsheet and everything is written down as far as how much I'm eating, what I'm eating. So, and it's definitely been very helpful in, helping guide me which direction I need to take now, because even where I'm at now, it's going to change. I'm eating certain foods at this point, but hey, a week or a month or 3 months later, it could change. Now, as for the protein to fat ratio, yes, this is an interesting thing as well. It's definitely something that we need to look at on an individual basis, because like I was saying earlier about the fat being needed in areas where we're living with more pollutants in the air, we need more fat. But somebody who lives out on a farm or, in the woods or up in the mountains away from all the pollutants, they may need less and more protein. So, all that has to definitely be worked with on an individual basis. So, because yeah, again, we're also no two people being the same, requiring the exact same nutrition dependent on our health. How sick are we? One person could be very sick and they need a whole lot of, different ratios. And somebody's a little bit better off, younger, maybe not as sickly, and their ratios will definitely be different as well. And then again, the ratios will be constantly changing. Once you start getting healthier, your ratios could change. So there's so many factors involved. So to expect everyone to eat the same amount and a set ratio to work for them on a daily basis is denying some people from gaining better health. If that set ratio doesn't work for them, they'll give up on the diet thinking it doesn't work. So when it most likely would have, if only they would have tweaked it in ways necessary for their personal nutritional needs. So as I mentioned earlier, my body craves more food when it's in detox and dumping mode. When that happens, I can't seem to eat enough. So once detox dumping ends, my appetite decreases to a normal level. And for me, what's normal for one person is normal, isn't the same for others. And then there are days I need to eat even more fat and more food because I'm preparing for an extended dry fast up to 7 to 10 days, which right now I'm in my fourth day of a
Oh,
dry
wow.
fast. So I
Okay.
really ate a lot and a lot of fat, higher amount of fat, because the fat is absolutely necessary in these fasts so that your body can make its own, water
Hmm.
from the fat. So,
No, correct.
and then I like to put on some extra pounds so I can be successful with the fast, because I'm slender as it is. And this way, I don't get too thin by the end of it. So this works very well for me. And then my appetite naturally decreases going into the winter, warmer months, and increases going into the colder months. So basically, overeating and ratios are quite an individual thing. So I wouldn't necessarily give any specific recommendations. And sorry if I'm a little dry mouth from my fast, but yeah, in case you noticed, yeah, it's my fourth day. So, and I'm looking to maybe make 7 days. I've done as long as 5 days and 16 hours, the longest dry. So I'm going for a 7 day one. We'll see how my body wants to go. But
Yeah,
I do follow my
you
body.
definitely have to keep me up to date with that 7 days, because
Absolutely.
the most I've actually gone myself has only been 4 days, but definitely
Mm-hmm.
haven't really exceeded above and
Mm-hmm.
beyond that. But I like what you said, because you're actually tuned in with your body. So anything you consume, whether you need to overconsume certain fats or certain proteins on specific days or specific seasons or specific quality of
Mm-hmm.
area you live in, whether in the city or whether out in the country, whether there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
toxins or
Yep.
not, you are quite tuned in with your body. So you know exactly what your body requires, and you actually give it the correct nutrients.
Yeah. That's it.
No, that is amazing. Now, in regards to our audience, that they are, of course, a lot of them are interested in starting a raw carnivore diet.
Mm-hmm.
Any important information they should know for like adaptation, etc.? Any minor
Mm-hmm.
symptoms they'll go through? Possibly, let's just put it in a way where some of these audience could be moving off, let's say, a ketogenic directly onto a raw carnivore, and
Mm-hmm.
or moving from a cooked carnivore onto a raw carnivore. What's your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on
Mm-hmm.
that?
Oh yeah. So for people who have been following a keto or cooked carnivore diet for a period of time, adaptation symptoms again will be different for everybody, because depending on their health, if it's really bad or good, how many oxalates they have. Because as soon as you go to a carnivore diet, you're going to start dumping oxalates big time. So that, I think, a lot of symptoms that people go through, and they call it like the keto flu. Also, their body is trying to adjust the the electrolytes. That stuff is happening as well. But I think on top of it, you got also the halides and bromides, and different other pollutants, metals that might be starting to detox as well. So you've got a lot going on at once when you shift into, so going cooked carnivore, if you're going from a keto or a SAD diet, that's really rough, just going into cooked, and you're going to get the symptoms. But then going from keto or cooked carnivore into the raw, now raw definitely boosts the detox symptoms very quickly. So yeah, the adaptations, for some people, adaptation symptoms may be non-existent, or it could be similar when they've started the cooked carnivore. Some people can experience diarrhea. I think more people will experience diarrhea than constipation, but constipation can also be an issue. But a lot of people who call it constipation isn't really constipation,
Mm-hmm.
because when you do go from eating vegetation, you're going to end up not having to go as often, as well as the body is now absorbing and using up most of the nutrients in the food that you're eating, whereas before the body couldn't. It had to dump out all these vegetables, the vegetation, and it barely used up any of the nutrients. So you had a lot of waste. But with a carnivore diet, you're going to have a lot less waste. And then raw carnivore, even less waste. So you
Yes.
don't go as often. But then, yeah, some people might experience stomach nausea, insomnia even, and other symptoms that they have never had before or haven't had in a long time. So this is typical. And again, it's everybody's amount of time they go through the adaptation symptoms will be, some will have a short period of time, other people could go a little longer, but eventually it will stop.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why with the raw carnivore, it is important to gradually start adding raw food into the diet for some people. Others might find they have no issues eating a whole raw steak for their first raw meal. There's also the issue with palatability. Same with this. Some people love it right off the bat, whereas others need to work up to enjoying a raw meal. So for both of these issues, the adaptation symptoms and palatability, for the first week, start by eating a bite or two of raw and cooking the rest of the meal. Then you can add a couple more bites each week until a whole meal is being consumed raw. Now, some people may need to up the amount of bites every couple of weeks instead, because they can't get used to the taste that quickly, or they're having some rough adaptation symptoms. So it's just a matter of time that the body will balance itself out and symptoms will stop, as well as the palate changing.
No, that is amazing. That is a really good way of starting out. I know when I started raw carnivore, I kind of gradually I would actually eat one meal cooked, one meal not cooked. Then I would do the same thing with the fish, and the fish was I think the toughest for me. But within about 3 days, I start to actually indulge more wild sockeye salmon more than beef, just because the flavor, the intensity,
Yeah.
and the being satiated was just amazing. Now, moving forward to our last question here. Now, what is your recommendation to everyone for types of beef cuts, fish, and or others, such as fats, for example? I know myself, and I know you actually introduced me to it as well, to which is suet, which is becoming one of my favorite fats right now. So what is your recommendation to the audience for different cuts or different fish?
Sure. And again, this is something I could give recommendations for each of these, but in the end, it's going to be up to each individual what their palate can handle and which foods they thrive on best. But personally, ribeye, filet mignon, flat iron, short ribs, and Denver steak, which is chuck primal cut, it's primo, are most palatable to me. Chuck roast is my least favorite cut. And then you got lamb loin chops are to live for. And then my favorite fish is wild caught Alaskan sockeye salmon. I haven't really had any other, well, I have had when I had sashimi at restaurants, I've tried different fish and stuff. But actually what's my favorite is salmon belly. That is awesome. So, and the only place I've seen it or had it was at a sushi restaurant. So, but I also eat a couple of shrimp and one scallop every other day to get a wider variety of nutrients. I've never had them raw before, and now I started eating them raw. They're absolutely delicious. Liver to me is the tastiest organ, which I enjoy beef and lamb. Pork, not so much. I like beef, lamb, pork, and chicken hearts. And as far as lamb and pork brains, they're very tasty if it's from a great source. If you get something that hasn't been pasture raised, they're not going to be good. So I'd stay away from those kinds of brain. I've tried beef kidney once, didn't like it at all, so we'll never have it again. Although I did enjoy the few times I had eaten pork kidney. Pork kidney was really delicious. And again, good sourced. And I've also had adrenal that sometimes ends up in the suet. I buy, and it's not bad. It doesn't have much of a flavor though. So that's actually good to eat too. And then I do like to include additional fat every day. And like you said, the suet, I eat both beef and lamb, which both have a very mild flavor. And then the beef has a dry, crumbly texture. And a lot of people don't like that, but I love it. And then whereas lamb has a soft, creamy texture, and of course I love that too. So I absolutely love both of them. And then I used to eat pork leaf fat a while back, but found it didn't leave me feeling my best, even though it was from pastured Berkshire pork.
Okay.
So I haven't eaten it in quite a while. So as far as what others should eat, I can only recommend that they experiment with trying a variety of animal-based foods to find what tastes good to their palate and what makes them feel their best physically, mentally, and emotionally.
No, true, 100%. I agree with that. So it's almost like going from nose to tail on the animal, but it is back to the individual, whether they do enjoy it or not, whether they feel optimal or not, because it's all about, the taste, the quality, where is it raised, pasture raised, grass-fed, non-grass-fed, so on and so forth. But yes, going from nose to tail, and as well, don't forget, I believe your fish is very, very important. It plays a huge role in the essential fatty acid, and I'm really huge on fish. And one of my favorite recently that I came across is sable fish. very, very fattier fish, almost 3 times as fattier as the sockeye salmon. And I found I've been actually enjoying that raw recently. I
And
could
where do
have
you get that? Where do you get it?
I've been actually importing it from a place from Vancouver because I'm down in Canada, and there's actually I get them in a box fresh. They come in roughly about 5 to 10 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
full loins, and I just slice them. I do freeze them because, of course, I'm not gonna be able to have all 10 pounds at once. Would
Yep.
love to, but they're limited. So I tend to actually have at least anywhere between 4 to 8 ounces almost on a daily basis. And
Hmm.
as soon as I have it, I can't have anything else. It's so dense, it's so rich in fat. And just
Wow.
for some audience asking me in regards to insulin spikes or anything like that, it doesn't even budge. It's just your glucose levels, everything just stays so balanced as well too. And at the same time, you're satiated for almost 8, 10, 12, 24 hours. Sometimes you even feel
Nice.
the hunger. So really,
And
really
where is that, a saltwater fish?
good. It is a
And where
saltwater
do they
fish.
fish?
It is actually a saltwater fish, and actually it spends most of its life actually all the way. I believe they go as deep as 1.5, 2 kilometers
Mm.
for depth, and they stay. They're almost like a bottom feeder.
Okay. So it's wild caught?
It is wild caught, yes, and very,
Perfect.
very delicious. I'll
Hmm.
get you the source, and I'll share
You
definitely the
should, because
source
I
with
would
the.
love to try it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, and would love to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
So we are running out of time here. Eva, was really nice having you on the show here,
I
and
appreciate you having me.
thanks for sharing all the amazing knowledge with everybody. And if you do come across any questions down the road, I'll definitely touch base with you back and forth. Would love to have you again for other discussions down the road as well too.
Sounds great. I'd love to come back too. Yeah, I had fun.
Same here. Awesome.